Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. Just trying to make sure I'm not getting tricked. That's how I spend a lot of my time now on social media. I'm not proud. In fact, I'm ashamed to admit that I've been tricked by AI a couple of times. Is there anything worse than when you send something to a friend and they go AI or fake? And especially when they do it quickly. Yeah, like it's better for you that you've been informed, but God, it sucks. I got tricked on this show once with I can't remember what that fake news thing is. But yeah, I'll get tricked every once in a while. And so, yeah, I'm seeing something here this morning that I'm not going to talk about, but I do think I'm getting tricked. I've asked Mirtle to look into it for me. He's on the show later. We have Steve Jones, co-host of the Dunkers Spot podcast, contributor for Yahoo Sports. Great guy, does a lot of awesome work breaking down film, talk about this Raptors game from last night, and, how we're supposed to evaluate this team. But first, just quickly, annoying. Breaks of the game. This is the game. You record a show, and news happens the second you step off the air, and that's what happened yesterday. I got Jim Bowden on. I'm pumped up to have him. He's a guy who's very in the know, one of the best insiders in the entire sport. And like 2 seconds after the show is done, bang, bang, two big signings in Major League Baseball from the winter meetings. Two huge dominoes. Kyle Schwarber, who he pointed to being a guy that could unstick the market to a certain degree, and Edwin Diaz, the unquestionable top closer on the market, goes to the LA Dodgers. And two things on this. So the Diaz deal, 3 years, $69 million, $4.5 a year deferred. You're basically, I think you're almost getting to the point now where when the big clubs, the luxury tax paying clubs, sign a stud free agent, they're going to be getting some deferrals on the deal. That the cost of getting your cake and eating it too now, as in going to a winner but getting big time money, is you gotta push a little bit of the cash down the road. Certainly with the Dodgers. And the Jays are trying to emulate that, which I'm fine with. Is it frustrating to see the Dodgers go out and get another superstar player? An unbelievable closer who answers a lot of questions for a team that really only had one susceptible spot in the postseason last year, which was their bullpen. Yeah, I hate it. I've said I hate the Dodgers more than I hate the Yankees now. That pendulum will probably swing back and forth. That could change as early as this season. But as of this very moment, the Dodgers are my most despised team in all of professional sports. They've jumped over the Habs. They've jumped over the Oklahoma City Thunder. I can't stand them. I don't want to see them win. I don't want to ever see them win again. Despise the Dodgers. Truly. And I know that gives me little bro energy because I'm worried about what's going on up top. And that would be, if I'm a Dodgers fan, hearing a Toronto guy say how much they hate them would be music to my ears. I'd be playing this. I'd have this in the background while I'm doing dishes. I gotta run an errand. I'm like, where's that Toronto sports guy talking about how much he hates our baseball team? 2025? Yeah. I'll take that one. That's very nice. There's the thing about the Diaz thing that drives me nuts, though, outside of him going to the Dodgers, is that his market was way under what we thought it was going to be. If you've ever done a fantasy auction draft with your buddies, when there's the person in your league that wins the most, you're always hoping the other players, the other people, or the other draftees bid that person up. Bid him up. That's what you're all screaming at the draft. Bid him up, bid him up, bid him up. Because there's supposed to be kind of a bit of unity amongst the lessers, let's say, to drive the price of a player that the champion has won. And I hate being able to look at this Diaz deal and go, oh, that's actually not so bad. 3 years for one of the best relievers in all of baseball with some money deferred. And like, yeah, it's a lot for a relief pitcher, but it's not backbreaking. If you consider that Devin Williams got in the ballpark of this money from the Mets, it's especially annoying. Like, would I have rather the Dodgers got Devin Williams than Edwin Diaz? Yes. Unquestionably, yes. And by the way, I'm not going to say poor Mets fans, but, did you maybe get tricked? Did this guy maybe trick you? I'm a little scared that they're going to do something crazy, like go after Bo or go after Kyle Tucker, because the pressure there does seem to be mounting a little bit amongst their fan base. Because, again, they've got the richest owner in pro sports. His whole thing was supposed to be spending a ton of money, and now he's kind of sitting on his hands going, well, I got off the Brandon Nimmo contract, and I brought in Devin Williams. So kind of have a little bit of an eye on them. The bigger thing, though, and I don't know, there's conflicting reports on this. I saw, again, I don't know if I'm getting tricked. I don't know if I'm getting tricked, because I saw some report that Red Sox writer had saying, hey, they're not in on Bo Bichette unless the price really comes down. So if I'm just reading the tea leaves on this a little, the thought would be that Bo right now is doing what he should be doing, which is trying to get the best offer he possibly can, that he's meeting with other teams. The Blue Jays said, hey, we're letting you go to market. So it's Bo's right to go visit anybody. He should feel no allegiances to the Toronto Blue Jays in terms of taking a meeting with the Yankees, the Red Sox, whoever, the Dodgers. Blue Jays made that choice. They could have been more aggressive. They weren't. Bo Bichette's free to hit the market. The only thing that gives me a touch of pause is that there's actually two things. One is that the Orioles offered the exact same thing for Kyle Schwarber as the Phillies did, which was 5 years, I think $170 million, which is a lot of money for a DH. Lot of money for a DH. The guys that are getting paid right now outside of the relievers, and again, Devin Williams got a good deal, and I think Diaz's money is great for a relief pitcher, even for a closer, but it's not the $100 million price tag that was floated out there for basically a month and a half. So that's big money deal for Kyle Schwarber. I don't like that the Orioles were willing to spend that kind of big money on a DH, given the way the AL East looks already, which is Jim's talking about the Yankees kind of lurking, being in on Cody Bellinger still, being in on Kyle Tucker, that they're going to look to spend. I don't believe that they're going to come out of this offseason getting skunked. The Orioles are clearly hungry to spend. Don't love that. And then the thing with the Red Sox is, again, I'm not Mr. Sources. I'm not Mr. Insider. I'm not Ben Nicholson-Smith. I'm no Jim Bowden. I'm no Jeff Passan. But I talked to some people. And my understanding was the Red Sox also really liked Kyle Schwarber, but the price went too high. So now they're playing that game with Bo, and maybe this is a good thing that they're turning down getting too aggressive for a guy like Kyle Schwarber, a DH of that caliber. But also, it's becoming apparent with the musical chairs in this all, somebody's not going to be happy, right? Like, there's only so many dudes left. Maybe the Red Sox are in on Ketel Marte. They've got the pitching prospects. Jim mentioned it yesterday that this is a team that would probably be a front runner he is available. But if a trade does get consummated, I don't really like Ketel Marte going to the Boston Red Sox. That makes them materially better. But yeah, the teams in the Blue Jays division are very hungry. They're not doing what the Mets are doing or what the Padres appear to be doing with the Dodgers out west, which is, have it. Have everybody. Do your thing. So I'm not changing my opinion on the Bo stuff because, again, it's just been too many people telling me Bo is the perfect leverage play. Even yesterday with Jim, we kind of broke it down like, hey, why would something like this get leaked now? Why this team with this player? It makes a lot of sense. But, yeah, I'm allowed to start to be a little nervous. I'm maybe not as confident as I was 2 weeks ago when they signed Dylan Cease. Also, quickly, got to say, pretty bummed out about this report. Mitch Bannon, good work by him at The Athletic. He's the first guy to get the Bieber stuff as far as I could tell. If I'm wrong, somebody tweet me at JD Bunkis, tell me that somebody else said it first. But yeah, he mentioned that Bieber, quote, dealt with forearm fatigue at the end of last season. And maybe he's saying, like, listen, maybe that's not the entire reason that he picked up the player option and avoided free agency, but also that's not exactly what you want to hear, especially considering as a Blue Jays fan, yeah, there was an added feeling of happiness. And that's just what happens with this market, right? Like, let's be real. We're the big boys in hockey. And as much as Canadians love being like, oh, America. And listen, it's more of a boomer thing. Let's be very clear. The boomers are very concerned with the States. But it's always funny to me that people want to talk trash about America and they'll take any opportunity to take a shot. But then if we don't get validation from the States, people also cry about that. You're like, okay, which is it? And it's a very Raptors-y thing too, by the way, which I'm going to get into in a second. But yeah, it always feels nice when you think that Toronto got chosen. Even Dylan Cease, he put it up there, like, I think it was his agent, Scott Boras, who said, hey, Dylan wanted me to make a deal work with Toronto. And people celebrated on the line. And I go, yeah, that's fine. Celebrate that. He also got over $200 million to pitch for the Toronto Blue Jays. He's like, I think the 6th or 7th highest pitcher in all of baseball. So yeah, I'm not gonna give him a parade for wanting to come to a team that was in the World Series last year at a basically record amount of money for him, for a guy who had an ERA over 4 last season. I'm excited about Dylan Cease, but yeah, come on. Bieber looked like something different. Bieber opting in felt initially as though this guy had unfinished business. There was no reason to believe that he was hurt because he literally pitched in Game 7 of the World Series. And so, yeah, to read he's got forearm fatigue and to have to go into the season with that, usually after the Tommy John surgery, you're fine. That the next season you're supposed to come back stronger and be better and be healthier and be more confident. So the idea that he might not open the season 100% and they got to baby him, it's a little spooky. Anyway, Armin and I were talking about the Raptors yesterday or 2 days ago. I can't remember. And we were looking ahead to this Knicks game saying, man, this is important. They've dropped 5 of 6. They beat up on all these crappy teams. And, yeah, it was exciting, and they looked really good. And Brandon Ingram was playing phenomenal and looked like a guy who's fitting in and unsticking a lot of their offense and making their half-court offense look a lot better than it has certainly in the last couple of years. And we were waiting for a tilt in the schedule. And I looked at it and thought, listen, is some of this run a little deceiving? Absolutely it is. Are they going to have growing pains? Of course they are. But the rest of the Eastern Conference doesn't look overly impressive to me. I watch a lot of it. Yesterday, Desmond Bane goes off for the Orlando Magic, but they got this Franz Wagner thing hanging over their team. I certainly don't view them as a juggernaut. I don't view the Detroit Pistons as a juggernaut. The Raptors are 3-0 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Granted, they've sat a lot of players, but it's very wide open. The Bucks have the Giannis situation. The Celtics are missing Tatum. And, yeah, Jaylen Brown's playing amazing. But overall, the encouraging thing was, well, when you look ahead, there's not so much in the East that terrifies you. So I don't expect them to go through slumps like this where they lose 6 of 7. And here they are, and they've done that. But what Armin pointed out is this their biggest game since 2022? And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Because he's right. No, this isn't the end of the world. It's the NBA Cup. I don't think anybody really cares. It's fun to see playoff environments and playoff-style basketball. But, yeah, the Raptors have been largely irrelevant for the last 3 years. And this was a moment for them on national TV in the States, which, again, need the validation, where they had a chance to prove something different. And, yeah, they kind of flopped. They got caved in. Basically, from the second quarter onward, it was never really a game. And Raptors were trying to cut the deficit to, like, single digits, and they couldn't even get there. Anyways, I don't know how to judge it because they're missing RJ Barrett and they're missing Emmanuel quickly. But coming into the season, my biggest concern with the Raptors was their ability to stay healthy, given they've collected a bunch of guys without great track records of staying on the floor. And so I'm not really sure how to balance this. Steve Jones, who is the co-host of the Dunker Spot podcast and a contributor at Yahoo Sports, does excellent work. You should absolutely follow him on social media, because the breakdowns make you a unquestionably smarter fan if you follow this guy. He joins me now to help me parse through this. What's up, Steve? How are we doing? Great to have you back.
Good morning. Happy to be here. Excited to be here. Ready to talk some hoops. Figure out what the Raptors are. You know what I mean?
Okay, this is the question. Like I don't know what the Raptors. I have some ideas of what they do well and what they do poorly, but when you're watching this slide right now, right, where they've lost 6 of their last 7, the defensive rating has slipped, the offensive rating has really slipped. Yeah, are you looking back at that run against the weaker teams in the conference or weaker teams in the NBA a little bit differently? Like, what is your evaluation of this team as of today?
I think they're a good team. I think they have been surprising. I think it's been an up and down season for them to a degree. I think they had that start that wasn't so great. The defense looked like it was not going to sustain anything, couldn't guard a soul, and then they were able to kind of fight through that, bounce back, turn things around. The offense flips, and so you find some success, and you kind of have a little bit of a winning formula there. And the defense found its groove. They looked disruptive. Brandon Ingram played very well. You had the balance and the vision with having those 4 in the starting lineup with Barnes and Quickly and Barrett and Ingram. And it all looked kind of good. Everyone kind of slotted into their roles. Injuries hurt, and now they kind of have the plus of the Eastern Conference being somewhere where everyone thinks that they can beat everyone. They also have the negative of the Eastern Conference being something that everyone thinks they can beat everyone, because you lose to Charlotte twice, you lose to New York twice, you lose to Boston. And so I think this is a team where they just don't have a lot of room for error. They don't have a lot of wiggle room. So the offense kind of has to be at a certain level for them to be good. For the offense to be at its best, the defense has to be able to consistently get stops, or else they're going to be facing a set defense. So you saw against the Knicks, hey, even when they tried to push it quick, Brandon Ingram's seeing 5 bodies. You know, if you want to drive, there's going to be help. These are the shots you're going to take. So I think it's a team that is going to have to understand who they are and understand that with success, the rest of the league is going to try and take things away.
So I think that's a great assessment. From my vantage point, they're a really good transition offense. Like when they get out and they make stops and they get out on the run, especially when they do have Quickly and Barrett, 2 other good transition players, they're going to run up the score on you. And it feels like they actually, like if you're talking about team identity, that seems to be what gets the Raptors rolling. Stops, transition, all of a sudden you're getting a Quickly pull-up 3. All of a sudden you're getting RJ Barrett driving to the basket with that left hand. You're getting Scotty Barnes getting to the basket and maybe creating for somebody else because he sees the floor very well. But the half-court offense, I will say, is starting to become a real concern because Brandon Ingram can hoop. Like, there's no question that he's a legit scorer in this league, and you saw it yesterday in the first quarter where, he had 18 points? And throughout the rest of the ball game, where they can get him his looks, and he can knock down basically anything from anywhere on the floor. But the question with this team was, hey, what is the depth? And early on in the year, they were kind of hitting on some of these guys, and you went, ooh, maybe – I think Zach Lowe or somebody tweeted or Kevin O'Connor was like, maybe Mamu right now is the 6th man of the year candidate. And you were getting a little bit from Jacoby Walter. And there was this idea that Grady Dick was going to be able to take a step. And I see a team that just doesn't really have enough shooting around them to be credible in the half court when those helps come. Like I like Jamal Shed a lot, but let's be real, when he's getting a wide open look from 3, I'm saying this is going in a quarter of the time. I think that the depth around those 2 players, when you're talking about margin for error, when you remove the Quickleys and you remove the RJ Barretts, I think they do sink down pretty quickly. And if that could happen to any one of their 5 starters, they lose any of those 5 guys, and the drop-off is actually materially significant.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where with these guys out, you saw these guys having to slot up. Mm-hmm. And they had early success. And I think part of it was everything was kind of in order as far as you talked about Brandon Ingram and his scoring. In the half court, they had a little bit more pace. They had a little bit more tempo and flow. And you had a guy in Brandon Ingram who could self-create. And I can finish a possession if we're in the mud. Now he kind of is the possession with where their current health is. So now we have to start by either him having the ball in his hands or we have to try and get him off ball. It takes 8 seconds to get him the ball. Now we're deep in the clock, and it doesn't feel as good. To the rest of the guys like Jamal Shed, that scouting report gets updated. So that success you had early in the season, okay, we know you're a driver now. Shoot the ball. Oh, we know you're a shooter, but we're still going to make you shoot because we don't want Scotty Barnes or Brandon Ingram to beat us. And so when you're in those plays, you have to make those plays. It feels a lot better when you have 15, 18 minutes to do it around the talent that you have in the starting lineup. When you are now part of that, or your role is elevated, or you have more minutes, you feel the weight of those misses more. And now does that affect the confidence? Does that affect, the defense digging their feet in as far as saying, no, you got to make these shots? That's where it gets tricky for the Raptors. And it's like, okay, I would rather see them at full health kind of go through a stretch like this than completely bury them because the league is kind of caught up a little bit and they're trying to figure out how to generate the best looks without their best guys.
So I'm certainly not going to bury them because, again, I watched the rest of the league, and yeah, I'm not overly impressed by most of the Eastern Conference. Like if you had to pick today, if I was like, hey, who's the team in the East that you are most confident is going to come out of there? Who would it be? See, pause, because you don't know, because it's flat.
I mean, that's the fun part about it, though.
No doubt.
I don't necessarily think that there is a head and shoulders favorite. I probably would still lean Detroit because of that defense. But at the same time, will they have offensive issues? It might just be the Knicks because they might be able to do just enough of both to make things bothersome. But I think that for the Raptors, it's a positive stretch of growth. You know what I mean? I think this is what you wanted to be. You wanted to have an improved season. You wanted to be better. You want to take the best shots from teams, and they're going to get that. Like, they've earned that by their start. Now it's how do they respond to this? And I think the toughest part about this stretch is you're losing a lot of home games. And so the Eastern Conference is wide open, but you want to stack some home wins, give yourself a little bit of wiggle room when you got to go on the road. You got to face the Western Conference. That is one of those moments, is one of those stretches where, ooh, we wish we could have had that week back.
Well, especially considering if you just look at the standings, which I know it's really early to be doing that, but when you're talking about giving away those kinds of wins, yeah, okay, flat Eastern Conference means there's more opportunity to beat teams in the postseason, but it also represents more of an opportunity to lose in a play-in game because the East is actually deeper with a lot of these teams that feel very similar. These are the most concerning. If I had to say the thing that's worrying me the most right now, it's this. Again, I know Brandon Ingram can score in the half court, and I know Scotty Barnes can create for himself, and I know when they're fully healthy, quickly, and RJ can do that as well. But as of this moment, there have been a few times now, and that's why the Ingram thing was so refreshing yesterday when he came out and was just looking fresh. He's looked fatigued at times in the last stretch, and he's playing like 34 minutes a night as a guy who doesn't really play 60 games every year. And it's pretty obvious how critical he is to this team's success, again, in that half court already. But also, when you're a Brandon Ingram offense, here's what's happening. The Raptors are 27th as of yesterday in three-point attempts per game, but they're also 21st in free throw attempts, which is telling me, like, okay, you are very much a Brandon Ingram team. Like, you are operating mid-range jump shots, you're not getting to the line, and you're not shooting a ton of threes. You add that to the accumulation of his minutes and his role, and then all of a sudden asking your team to be defensively responsible, that's a lot to ask of Brandon Ingram, especially considering, yeah, he wants to play in all these games. He doesn't want to be load managed, but at some point, I do wonder if this is going to catch up with them.
I think it's a good point. It's a fair point. It's a long season, and they're asking them to do a lot. I think, to your point about the free throws, is interesting. They shot 18 last night against the Knicks. 8 of those came from Brandon Ingram.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's the balance you want, but I think that's where you miss RJ Barrett and his drives. It's just, okay, how many players on this team can get downhill? How many players can get a paint touch? How many other players can force defenses to help? And can you kind of get a secondary drive? Can you get a third drive? Can you kind of have more of a flow? And so how much of it is, hey, does Jakob Poeltl get healthier? And we can kind of get him more involved. Or our team's just going to say, you know what, actually forget his flow and handoffs. We're just going to switch that too. I think if they can just find the balance in the half court of just keeping attacking and keeping defenses in rotation, those are their best possessions to me. When they're able to get a team in rotation and not necessarily take the first shot available, get the next best one, I think that's when they get their best flow. But to the Ingram point, I think it's hard to deny his skill set and his importance. And so you end up kind of putting more weight on him, especially with, one, him scoring this well, and two, teams looking to, like, okay, if we have a matchup, we'll double him. We'll send more help. You know, from a coaching perspective, okay, we get 2 on the ball. That's an advantage. We can play out of it. Well, now we're asking him to do even more and trying to get him the ball even more. And does that slow us down in a way that we didn't anticipate? So it's a give and take. And so that's the tough part about the stretch for the Raptors. Which part do we lean into and which part kind of unlocks us again?
So I've actually been really encouraged by the way Ingram shares the ball. Like his playmaking looks better to me than it did with New Orleans. And granted, I didn't watch him as much, but his willingness to make a play for others is clearly there. But he's not Jokic. Like he's turnover prone, and I was joking about this with my producer the other day. Like, he's more of a what's the play right in front of me type of playmaker than he is like, I know there's a guy in the corner and I'm making this, like, you know, I'm seeing 2 steps ahead of the game type of playmaker. So it's been encouraging, but also you're seeing the effectiveness of defenses when they're throwing two at him and how quickly that can just bog down the Raptors attack.
Yeah, and I think it kind of ties into where a lot of his turnovers, to your point, he sees what he's supposed to do, but he's trying to fire a pass into the lane. There's four bodies, or the driving kick doesn't go the right way. And so he's not necessarily going to bend defenses like certain players do. And okay, I know where the read is. I can get to my spot. But the fact that you have someone that can get that attention is a positive. So I just think for Toronto, you got to balance it, because this is a team that's had a lot of moments where teams have just said, we're going to switch, and even Boston did it the other day. Okay, and so you need someone that kind of be able to make some of those shots where it doesn't matter what your scheme is. You do that enough, we get more attention. If we have to capitalize on that attention, that's always a tough part for scoring players, young guards, older wings, is, okay, I've done my job to get this attention. Are we now going to profit off that as well? And that's where it's like, I like that Brandon Ingram is making the right reads, is making the right plays. And it's not like they're just spamming one specific action for Brandon Ingram outside of like cross screening to get him a post up. It's not like it's, okay, we have to put pick and roll and get two on the ball and play out of it. He opens things up for them. And if he can find that blend, they can get healthy. We've seen it do good things, especially later in games. Like, I think that helps a lot in the fourth quarter. So it's been a plus, but it's still going to be something they have to grow with.
Well, I think for me, there's a couple things that need to change. One is it's becoming more clear the import of RJ Barrett, which, like you mentioned, guys who can go downhill. That's RJ. He can go downhill. He can make a bucket for you. The problem I have with it is the Raptors have basically telegraphed he's the odd man out if they're to make another move, right? If there was one guy that was supposed to be missing from this team for a bit of a stretch that you would have said, I bet you, like, truth serum for the Raptors, they would have been okay with, it would have been RJ, because they want to see what it looks like without him with this group, because they do have depth on the wing. They've got three different guys that are supposed to be able to slot into that role and give them something. And so it's a two-part problem that involves him, which is when he's out, okay, you got Ochai, you got Grady, and you got Jacoby Walter. They're going to absorb those minutes. But none of those three guys have really grabbed the reins. They've all showed flashes, but no one consistently that has been giving them, again, that 3-and-D role that they so desperately need from that spot. And I guess from your vantage point, which of those three are you most bullish on?
See, the tough part is I've been intrigued by all of them. I've been Ochai Agbaji for like 2-3 years consecutively because he has the body, he has the frame, he can make shots, he can get downhill, and I keep waiting for it to happen every single night. And there are moments where I'm like, yep, there it is. He gets it. And there are moments where it's like, okay, a little invisible. When's the last time you shot? When's the last time you drove? Or you're just playing defense out there? And then with Grady, it's like, okay, the shooting is there. Where's everything else? Because teams are like, if he plays at a high enough level, teams are just continually to put him in action, and he's going to have to deal with that. And so when it comes to young players, it's what do you do consistently? What can I count on that I know you're going to bring to the table every single night? That's how you get more minutes on the floor. That's why Colin Murray Boyles, hey, please come in and deliver us energy, and please defend, and we'll live with whatever you do. You know what you're going to get from every single night. The potential or the appeal or the overall talent can be tempting with some of these wings, but if I don't know what I'm getting, I'm going to go with what I trust. And so that's how you end up with the starters of that's playing a few extra minutes because we need X, Y, and Z. And so I think for them, they just got to find a way to consistently produce. And I think it's hard because, like, if you're Jacoby Walter, okay, I'm making shots. I bring that to the table. What happens when you're not making shots? What else are you bringing to the table? So I think there's just a lack of consistency that is kind of put them back into the box, I feel like, every year. Here's the promise. Oh, where'd it go? We need something else. And so who's going to emerge from that? I still go with Ochai, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough, man. And here's the thing, too, is Ochai makes the most money, and this is a team that's in the luxury tax. And it's the same thing with RJ, where you've looked at it and said, all right, if this team is going to pivot and they are going to move and they're going to use a salary off the roster, it's very unlikely that it's going to be quickly. It's very unlikely that it's going to be Mirtle unless it's for another center. Okay, it's not going to be Barnes. It's not going to be Ingram. It's RJ. And the same thing applies to Ochai, where you look at it and go, all right, if they're flipping somebody and they want to get under that tax, then he's the likely body out. I do wonder for a team that clearly expedited their rebuilding mode, right, and is now trying to become a lot more competitive, if this is the drawback where you're not as patient with some of these guys. Like, I like competition. I think you should be able to thrive in that and eventually, like like I'm a believer when they talk about quarterbacks. Hey, he's too young and you don't want to lower the eye level. I go, okay, if some sacks are going to change the outcome of this guy's career now, then I don't think he was ever going to be a winner. So I feel similarly with these wings where I go, no, make him compete. Take him out of the lineup. But to your point about trying to find what that other level is, I do think it's harder when you're playing 6 minutes, you miss 2 shots, and then immediately it's, hey, we're going to try the other guy, and now he's going to be playing under that same duress.
Yeah, it gets tough. And I think the other thing for Toronto is you had success, so you've won.
Yeah.
You're winning games. And now because you're winning games, okay, we need to keep winning. So now it alters things a little bit more as opposed to, okay, this is our set rotation. It's a play by field type beat. And I think throughout the course of a season, if you're a young player, you got to ride the waves. Like you got to go through the ups and downs. You got to stay ready, and you got to be ready for your moment and try to find and understand, okay, what does the team need from me? If I can do this, will that earn me more? And I wonder how often they feel that, because as the season goes on, the rotation is going to tighten up. So like this is the time is now. The opportunity is now to establish what we need, and it might change. With everyone healthy, everyone lines back into their role. We know exactly what we're going to get. We're good to go. When it's not, there's opportunity, but there's also drawbacks.
Yeah. Again, I really do want to see him healthy. It looked good when everyone was healthy. But it's harder to use that as an excuse in the modern NBA when you look down everybody's lineup and each team is missing a guy. And also with the Raptors, when, again, you have a collection. I did this at the beginning of the year. I combined all the games missed for the 5 starters, and it's weighty. And there's some load management. We were tanking stuff in there. So you give it a little bit of little bit of grace. But overall, you balance your team on 5 guys that miss time. I don't really want to hear, well, when we get healthy.
That makes sense. Sense. I think health or not, I think it's just understanding your identity if you're Toronto and leaning into that. And even if guys are out, okay, can we get our defense back to a certain level where no matter who's out there, we're going to compete, we're going to get stops, we're going to be disruptive, and that's going to give us a better chance offensively. And I think it's one of those moments where one thing can trigger everything. It's hard when you're giving up a bunch of points to these teams because you don't have the offensive wiggle room. So I think for me, they go by how their defense goes.
Agree.
And that's going to put you in a position to, okay, we may not have X, Y, and Z, but we can compete. And then we can get it over the top with Scotty, with Brandon. And so I think they just got to get back to that. That's been their best moments to me. When their defense has struggled, it's hard for them to steady the ship because they scored a lot of points in that first quarter too. Problem is, once that offense slips and that defense isn't necessarily giving you more of a chance to compete, you put yourself in danger. So, I mean, I know the offensive struggles stand out. They're playing slower, but get some stops. Get out and run. Play for each other. Get downhill. Make extra passes. Like, compete the way you have. And don't rock the boat too much and don't change too much. If they got to keep the belief in what they do.
Yeah, and that's, again, another encouraging part for me is they do seem well coached. Their coach is hyper competitive. He does seem like a winner, and they look like a group that has – you're right. Those early couple games, there was one game against Dallas, and I know it was like 4 games into the season, but they played so poorly defensively that I was like, oh, this is a write-off. This isn't going to work. Like, it was that level of bad. And now I look at it and go, okay, at least they're giving that effort. Brandon Ingram has been doing that. But to the point about his minutes, it's like, all right, if he's going to play 34 a night and have to operate this way in the half court, how much are you reasonably going to expect from him defensively? The most encouraging piece of maybe the entire season is Barnes' defense. And, like, again, we had seen it, like, but they were tanking the last couple of years. So you're looking at it and going, I don't know really what to make of this, and he's in and out of the lineup. Has he taken a leap there to you? Like, is this materially different than the guy that we have seen, but in, sparse contributions?
Yeah, I feel like his effort has been way more consistent as opposed to turning it on with certain matchups, defending certain types of players really well. I think he's grown on ball and off ball to understand and communicate. And so a lot of times when you watch Toronto, when they're humming defensively, it's not necessarily just the ball pressure or the switching. You have to watch how they rotate behind it and how they help each other. And I see more of Scotty Barnes pointing and communicating those type of things and being able to help elevate everyone as a team on defense on top of what he does, with his ability to pressure, ball pressure. I think that's the positive for me. Him being able to blend that and being able to help his teammates to improve on that end. That's where I'm like, okay, this is a guy who not only is a good defender, but can be a key piece of a good defense.
Totally agree. Again, I would follow Steve on Twitter because, again, you're going to get a lot of really good breakdowns. And it's just one that it's fun to just even go through your Twitter each night. Just be like, okay, this is a little nice catch up on some of these other games. Co-host of the Dunker Spot podcast and contributor at Yahoo Sports. Thanks so much for making time, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Yeah, take care, man. Steve Jones. I agree that's the Raptors' identity. You got to get stops. You got to get out in transition. And you got to feel like a dog defensive team. When they get healthier and you have RJ and you have Quickly in there, is that what it's going to look like against these teams? The other piece of it that is a little concerning. Again, I'm not trying to go full doomsday here. It's just like Jakob Poeltl potentially not being healthy and already having to manage what is maybe a back when we're in early December is frightening. He's as important as any of those other five guys. So you already got RJ missing time. Quickly was just an illness, so you kind of dismiss that one and go, that's just kind of a bad bounce that he misses this game. But having a load manage Poeltl and ask more of Mamu, ask more of Colin Murray-Boyle to play that 5 spot. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to be able to be – I kind of think if you're going to be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, you're going to have to finish as a top 10 defense. And I think that's where they sit in defensive rating still overall. But over these last 7 games, they have slipped to 16th. And that's what you're seeing. Too much half-court offense, too much reliance on Brandon Ingram, too much fear that you're going to wear that guy down and that he's not going to be able to be the same guy night in, night out for you that consistently can score the way that he did against the Knicks. And, yeah, not enough other guys just getting open looks and starting to feel themselves in the flow of what is a really, really, really good transition offense. So, yeah, not doomsday, but certainly some stuff that this team's going to have to shore up. I forgot to ask him about AD and whether he thinks that's a fit. Who cares? I hope it doesn't happen. So I don't even want to talk it into existence. You can subscribe to this podcast. You can leave 5 stars. Reach out anytime on Twitter and Instagram at JD Bunkis, unless you're trying to trick me. And, yeah, we'll take a quick break. We got James Mirtle later in the show, too. So, yeah, it was a hoops night. Outside of Bobby McMahon getting his 1-game suspension, which is what we predicted on Leaf Stock, it was pretty much sit down, watch these 2 NBA Cup games. And so that gave me time to reflect on the NBA Cup in general. So watched the Magic and Heat game before tuning into the Raptors and shared as much as I think I really can with the Raps, outside of just this, which is, yeah, that, again, you make those trades and you speed up the timeline, which means you speed up the discourse, which means you remove time for, well, they'll figure this thing out. It's not doomsday yet, but if you look a lot like this and you get into February, late January, yeah, the conversation shifts pretty quickly. This was always a 1-year runway to find out what exactly you have with this group from a ultimate ceiling standpoint. So I'm watching the Magic and I'm watching the Heat and even that Raptors-Knicks game. And I will say the courts are hit or miss for me, and I don't mind the attempt at doing something different to make you feel like what you're watching is important. But some of them are just so ugly. Like the Raptors one is so terrible that I feel like it actually does impact the viewing experience. One of the other ones is Minnesota's. When they do it, I go, ugh, please. It's headache-inducing. And as much as I don't think anybody really cares who wins the NBA Cup, unless you're the Lakers, who I think hung a banner, which is deeply embarrassing behavior for that franchise. I think if I'm trying to remember correctly, this is the 4th, and it's Bucks, Lakers, and Pacers. That's what I want to say are the 3 teams that have won the NBA Cup. Maybe. Might have that wrong. No franchise is really going to celebrate it. No fan base is going to be pumped. Nobody, I would assume, is going to buy merch that says NBA Cup Champions 2025. But what is really good about it and what makes it so digestible is it's pretty clear the players are taking it more seriously, and so are coaches. And even in a league where so many guys are unbelievably wealthy now, to the point where you look at it like, we were supposed to have a guy on this week who declined because it wasn't a paid interview, who has made over $100 million in his career. I went, all right. This your right. That's your right. But this player was a bench player throughout his entire career. I don't know how many games started he would have had, but it would have been because of injuries. So you can make that kind of money in the NBA, and it's only getting more and it's only getting bigger, and we're seeing this across the league, right? The contracts are getting absolutely insane, but still the money is a motivating factor, and there are guys on the bench. Like, if you're the Raptors, it is cool that you play for the AJ Lawsons. It is great that there's a bunch of guys on that team that aren't making big money. That it really is impactful. So you've seen that. You've seen that effect over the course of these NBA Cups where the style of play, the rotations that you're seeing emulate more of playoff basketball. Even in that one, the Raptors didn't take out their starters until the final 2-3 minutes of the game. And it was a 20-point lead. They were fouling Jalen Brunson. Darko was not going into that sweet night. They were giving it an honest, real effort. I think the whistles were a little bit more playoff style. I think that the style of play was a little bit more playoff style. And that's enjoyable to me because it gives you a little bit of a better feeling in terms of, all right, what is a group going to look like? And that's the part that really bums me out about the Raptors missing quickly last night and missing RJ, who, again, I'm a little less forgiving to. I believe in the importance of RJ Barrett. I think he's crucial to this team. And there was an argument to be made that through the first stretch of games, he was maybe their best player. They're trying to be multiple attackers, and when you take away two of those guys, it is real hard to evaluate what exactly their half-court offense looks like. But that was the part that stung, is you got a real moment to evaluate them against one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference and tell yourself, all right, this is something to look at come playoff time. All right, that's what they look like defending when everybody is giving a top-tier effort. And so normally, I watch a lot of the league and I tune into mostly Western Conference out of market games just because the Eastern Conference collides a lot with the Raptors and the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I'm not doing the NBA League Pass thing as much as I used to, where I'll shop around and watch every Eastern Conference team. So last night was nice because I actually got to watch a full Heat game, of which I've only done once. And that is the thing that stuck out to me, is watching the Heat and watching the Magic. Again, teams that are missing guys, in particular the Magic, who are missing their best player. You could very, very easily slip into a play-in spot if you're the Raps. When some of these teams are at their very best, they look like they have ceilings that are very close, if not a little bit higher than what the Raptors got. And they should if you're the Magic, right? You just made all those moves to acquire Desmond Bane. You spent all those draft picks in order to get him. You're kind of all in. Really, not even kind of. You're very all in. Outside of some kind of a monster trade involving one of the two major pieces that you have, this is the team that you got. But they looked really good. And Desmond Bane finally had a performance that made you go, oh, okay, that's why you give up all those picks for him. He's that kind of player. But Miami is tough. Miami is really gritty. Miami, you know what pisses me off about Miami? They got Norm Powell in that trade with the Clippers. And you think about the Kawhi dominoes. And Kawhi doesn't run it back with the Raptors. He goes to the Clippers. Every Raptors fan hates the Clips. They can't stand, I shouldn't say every, because a lot of you ended up doing the whole, hey, he was never supposed to be here. He gave us an honest effort, so I'm just going to still root for Kawhi. For me personally, and for, a lot of my friends, people I talk to, they were pretty annoyed with it. The principle of basketball is you win, you run it back. Kawhi didn't do that. He went to the Clippers. It was a disaster. It's been well documented how bad of a disaster it is. But the trickle-down effects are they get Norm Powell there, and he becomes a just a better version of himself, a more consistent version of himself. He unlocks what was the best stretch of Norm Powell's career. He had a really good stretch of play with the Raptors where it was the tank season and they ended up having to trade him, a trade that didn't work out for them. But Norm finds something with the Clippers. It's very clear that he becomes one of their most important players. And then this past offseason, they decide that they're not going to pay Norm Powell and that they want to get in the Bradley Beal business. And so they let him go to Miami. And it's becoming enough time now where the Miami rivalry with Toronto is dissipating that nobody feels, I think, as much hatred for the Miami Heat as they did certainly during the DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry era. But I don't like the Heat, and I certainly didn't mind Norm Powell being out in the Western Conference, a real Raptors fan favorite, a guy who gets it, a guy who passionately played for this market and who even came on this show and spoke glowingly about how much he wanted the opportunity to see it out in Toronto and that he never wanted to leave Toronto. And that is the stuff that actually, means, I think, a little bit more is when the athletes talk about this city and they understand what they had here. And watching him play for the Miami Heat, I went, all right, Norm's on the Heat. I don't like that. I didn't like when Kyle Lowry was there, and I don't like how Norm Powell was there. And just the fact that he is ultimately a member of that team because of Kawhi Leonard trickle-down decisions makes it even more aggravating. I absolutely cannot stand it. Anyways, who wants to win a bunch of cash while doing the best thing this holiday season? Sportsnet 590 The Fan is all in supporting the 50-50 fortune for sick kids. It's a 50-50, so the more money we raise, the more kids we can help, and the more holiday cash you can win. The current take-home prize has continued to skyrocket. It's now $330,000 guaranteed. Buy your tickets at 5050fortune.ca or text the word money to 590-590 and we'll send the link right to your phone. 18 plus only. Please play responsibly. Standard message and data rates apply. Lottery license RAF 1518410. So Bobby McMahon is suspended. My strong bet is Nick Robertson draws back in. The Toronto Maple Leafs have looked better. They and the Raptors have flipped. Raptors were the darlings of Toronto. Everybody was comparing them to the Blue Jays. That might have been a little premature. Everybody was burying the Toronto Maple Leafs. All of a sudden, these two teams, like maybe they just can't be good at the same time. We got to explore that possibility. So what, from the numbers standpoint, has really improved outside of the goaltending? And what are the stakes moving forward with Nick Robertson, who is coming back with the opportunity for scratch and score with James Mirtle? That's next. So the thing that I'm trying not to get tricked on is there's a ton of, I shouldn't say a ton, there's a few tweets that I can't read. Like if anybody can, God, I hope that these aren't swears. If anybody can translate, Avlosjar, Kalajarnkrok, Atavander Tilbrinus. That's from Sportbladet that has 131,000 Twitter followers in Sweden. If you could do this one. Uppgifter. Kalajarnkrok blir nästa NHL återvändare I Brynäs partnera uppges vara överens. Also, I would like to know from anybody Swedish, if they're listening to this show, how I did with those. That would be great. At JD Bunkis. James Mirtle. Myrtle's not there. Anyway, these reports are essentially that, Kelly Yarncroke is maybe getting transferred somehow to Brynäs in the Swedish Elite League. And I don't know how that works at all. I've seen some stuff that says maybe he's just like, he's been rumored to go after the season, that he wants to return to Sweden eventually. I'm like, okay. But yeah, that would change quite a bit for the Toronto Maple Leafs, given that we have Nick Robertson getting healthy scratched. I did a segment yesterday about how if I'm Robertson, I'm asking for a trade, because if Kelly Yarncroke can get in there, who has been, let's just be honest, pretty dreadful for the last year. All of his fancy numbers are bad. He's not really contributing much. And if you got to sell me on the whole idea that he's a defensive specialist, like, okay, is he better than Robertson at that? Sure. Do I view him as a indispensable piece of the organization for when they want to play at their very best? I do not. So if there is any validity to this, and if they are able to get off of this guy, and I think let me just Google this quickly. I want to say he's under 3, but that it's close to 3. Yeah, 2.2? Oh, 2.1. All right, but if they can get off his $2.1 million contract, and yeah, free up space for a guy like, I'm trying not to sneeze, a guy like Nick Robertson to just be in the lineup more consistently, I think that that's a win for them. God, this won't go away. Yeah, so that would clear up quite a bit of a logjam. I don't know what to make of this. Again, this is very much like being reported by a bunch of outlets that I cannot read, and I don't know what the timeline of this would be or how, again, this is even possible. And I'm betting that James Mirtle doesn't know either, but he is here. He's late, but he's here. James Mirtle joins me now. What's up, buddy? Thanks for being on time. Did you see this DM I sent you about Kelly Yarncroke?
I did not. I'm just picking up. You're talking about a cap hit, and is this like a contract termination, or what are you talking about here?
Okay. So I'm not going to do my Swedish reads again, but I sent you a DM that was in English, and I think it was from Elite Prospects. So, yeah, there's a little bit of buzz. Yeah, it's from Elite Prospects. It says EP Transfers, rumors. Kalle Yarncroke of the Toronto Maple Leafs is heading to Brynäs of the, Swedish Hockey League. Is that even possible? Have you heard anything about this?
It's certainly possible. If a player is willing to get out of the end of their deal, you can do a contract termination and go wherever you want. You can go to the KHL, you can retire. And I wonder, I don't know this off the top of my head, but probably Yarncroke's contract is heavily front loaded, and he probably got a big signing bonus on July 1, and there's probably hardly any money left on his deal. So he might only have like a league minimum base salary that they need to pay out. So the money might be inconsequential for him, and maybe he decides he doesn't want to sit in the press box the rest of the season. Well, he's 34, 35 years old, right? I mean, he's towards the tail end of his career, and the Swedish players, a lot of them tend to go home at the end of their careers and either play in the Swedish league or just retire back home.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the actual details of the cash breakdown year over year, and it looks like
I can do it if you got it there.
He had a signing bonus this year of $1.3 million. So if that equates to real money off of this deal, you're right. That's league minimum in terms of cash that he's making right now.
Yeah.
So he'd be sacrificing that prorated rate, which is a few $100,000 to head back to Sweden. And I'm guessing that if this SHL team is willing or is wanting to take him in Brynäs, that would mean that they would just likely make up that money anyway in whatever contract that they're giving him. Like that he would end up still coming out with a net positive on this deal.
Swedish league doesn't pay that much. So I mean, he's probably giving up a little bit, but
they can't. They're not going to pay him $1 million a year.
I'd probably not.
Okay, they're going to pay
in like the Swiss league or KHL. You can make that, but Swedish league, there's not that many guys making $1 million.
Okay, well, I think for him to be able to make up this money, he's just got to make a few $100,000. And then he gets to go home and he doesn't have to be a healthy scratch and there's all this different stuff. So, yeah, this is something to monitor. This is something like, maybe fire a text while I'm doing one of my long little ranty things in terms of there's real validity to this. But this kind of like, okay, so we are going to start with this rather than, I got a bunch of things for you today that we've talked about before heading into the show. But I was making the case that, man, if you're Nick Robertson and you're getting scratched and you've put together the season that you've had, And that Kelly Yarncroke, if he's coming in for you, then at what point are you just not saying yet again, hey, somebody trade me? This almost maybe feels irrelevant if Yarncroke is off the roster, but given that it was tenuous with Robertson and given that, yeah, when they're healthy, they're playing a rookie in the top 6, that they like Max Domi as a better fit in the top 6, that there is now a third line that is generating some offense and looks quality together that does not look like a fit for Robertson. Do you think that his play early on garnered more from the trade market if they were willing to move him? Because you and I were kind of both of the belief that during the preseason that the main reason why he was still on the roster is that no team was willing to part with anything for him.
I mean, maybe a slight upgrade in what you would get for Robertson, but I wouldn't get too excited about anything. You know, if we were talking about a 5th or a 4th round pick earlier in the year, maybe it's slightly higher than that now. So I don't think you're going to get a great asset for Nick Robertson. And I think you got to be careful too with picturing him. You know, if you lose Yarncroc, maybe you need Robertson around, right?
Yeah.
Like, how often are they going to have all 13 of their NHL forwards healthy and have Michelli and Robertson in the press box? It's probably not going to be that frequent the rest of the way.
Yeah.
They're fortunate that they're healthy up front right now, and they're going to need these guys. So with the way Robertson's played, I would keep him in the fold right now. And you talk about the lulls with Easton Cowan. I mean, maybe he's a guy that you're going to want to put in the press box every once in a while as well.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be too quick to move off of NHL talent right now. The thing with Yarncroc is that, like, he hasn't even played up to the capabilities of a guy you could get on waivers. Like, he's not had a good season.
Yeah.
You know, all the surgery and everything he went through last year, he hasn't rebounded well from that. He's not bringing you any offense. He's fine defensively, but if you can get off of 2.1 million, you can replace what Yarncroc's given you on a league minimum salary by picking someone up from around the league, or even probably calling someone up from the Marlies.
Yeah.
But Robertson, I think, is a step above that.
I agree. I'm not, so I want to be clear here. I'm not advocating that the Leafs trade Nick Robertson because I think that he is a useful piece and that this is just a weird marriage between him and this group where, is he perfect? No. Would he like more ice time? Yes. Because when he was producing this season and he was asked point blank by reporters, what is different for you this year? He said, ice time, period. That's it. He wants to play. And he's a guy who works his ass off during off seasons. He is a guy with a lot of self-belief and confidence. And he clearly wants to play and thinks that he is one of the best 12 forwards on this hockey team. And I would agree with him. I think the tricky part is if Yarncroc was staying, the case that I was making is if you are healthy scratching him to put in a guy like Kelly Yarncroc, who has done nothing for over a season now, and who you mentioned is not even playing up to the standard of another team picking him up on waivers and who can be easily replaced by a league minimum player, then from my vantage point as Nick Robertson, that would be too much for me to take. When I'm having a good year, when I'm taking a bit of a step forward, and I'm looking at the lineup and saying, okay, you've chosen Max here over me, you've chosen Easton Cowan here over me, I'm done with trying to wait for my opportunity. I'm trying to make it happen. If you remove Yarncroc from the situation, if he is going to Brynäs, then that changes it all. And now you've got Nick Robertson basically back in the lineup consistently with the opportunity to move up, which is what I would be fine with if I'm him, because again, nobody's kicking down the door to the Toronto Maple Leafs trying to pry Nick Robertson and give him something better somewhere else.
Robertson played 6 minutes against Montreal on Saturday, right? I didn't see. Did you see something in the game that would have meant that? Because I thought he looked pretty good.
Same.
You know, I thought he was. The last few games, he's been flying around the ice and he's been skating really well. And on that fourth line, he's bringing some energy. And what game was it where he had the play where he beat the defensive player down into the corner and got the puck, and then that was, I can't remember which game that was, but Lawton got the goal out of it. I mean, that was hard work from Robertson that created that.
Yep.
So, you know, even though he hasn't been playing a lot of minutes, it's okay, I see some identity for him on this line where, you know, Lawrence and Lawton need a guy that can really move the way that he does and can make some plays, and it has that shot, just gives a little bit of offense to that fourth line. And then, you know, I think that's been fine. And Robertson's also one injury away from being in the top 6 or one poor week from Easton Cowan where he's struggling. Or, I mean, there's been lots of talk about creating 2 power play units. And if that happens and they're starting to use PP2 more or putting more talent on PP2, all of a sudden maybe Robertson becomes more prominent on the power play. So I think there's still opportunity for him. And I think they need to make sure they don't lose him and they don't have him. It's fine if he's got this chip on his shoulder because that's the kind of person that he is. I mean, he's always going to have that, I think. unless he's on the first line every night with Austin Matthews, he's always going to be wanting more ice time, and he's always going to be wanting to think he can have more opportunity. But I think right now the Leafs need him.
I agree. I don't think that they should lose him. That's why I think it's a mistake to put Calle Yarncroke in the lineup over him. Like, let Calle Yarncroke collect his money and let him sit in the press box if he isn't going to Brynäs, over taking away minutes from that guy in Robertson. And what I would say is I agree with you about hey, there's a little bit of a scoring punch to that line down the lineup. And we have seen lately Lawton contributing and Lorentz playing a little bit more dangerously. But if you look at the way that they're used situationally, one is there's still not a ton of minutes for them, even though I think we would both agree that line has looked phenomenal as of late and has actually given them a little bit of something extra beyond just what is being done in the box score. But they are used almost every single time on a defensive zone faceoff. Like, they get thrown out there for that job to alleviate some of the guys up the lineup. And so, again, this is a very much if Yarncroke is staying thing. The fear that I would have if I'm Robertson is, okay, if that's the group that you're trying to go with, the D-zone draw group that is just essentially supposed to be mostly punting and providing energy, then it scares me that you could have me in another lineup for Yarncroke. If I'm slotting and I'm competing with him, it's a problem. If I'm slotting into the fourth line and then I get that opportunity for the power play and I am that one injury away from more minutes, then he has to be comfortable with it. So it basically comes down to that equation.
Yeah, I think that's where they're at. And they're probably going to say to Robertson, too, if this Yarncroc thing happens, is like, we punched this hole for you. And,
Yeah.
you're still part of our plans and there's opportunity for you. So, like I said, I mean, how many games this season are you going to have every single forward healthy all throughout the maybe 10, right? So Robertson's going to play.
Well, and at some point, too, as encouraging as Easton Cowan's play has been, and to me, there's just no doubt that he is earning a lot of his ice time. And when the Leafs were struggling, he was one of their most impactful players. Like, no Nyes, no Matthews in the lineup. That second line carried them at times, and I thought Cowan was a buzzsaw. There were a few different games where, he was just one of their most notable players. I think that he is actually, when I look at the power play right now in terms of things that are going well, the way that Cowan is playing on whatever unit he's a part of feels different than guys that have been here for a while and who are struggling. But, the idea that you're going to want to shelter him and put him down in the minors at some point and give him a little different look, or that he's not going to hit a rookie wall, I think is crazy. So if you're Robertson, you probably have to be looking at that and saying, my best shot is to beat out Mirtle for a position on the second line with Tavares and Nylander, and that actually is kind of realistic for him.
I think he has beat out Mirtle, right? Like,
Yeah.
Michelle's more firmly in the doghouse right now than Robertson is. So it's it'll be interesting to see how it plays out here. But I think that what they need to do is talk to Robertson's camp and say, hey, like, let's not get back into the trade request and leaking that out into the media again, the way that we were in training camp in the beginning of the season, because, you've shown something to us this year and we want you around here.
And if I'm him, I'm saying, okay, then play me.
The only thing that I would say as a caveat to that is they move off of this Yarncroc money. They've got Stolars on LTIR, Tanev potentially on LTIR shut down. All of a sudden, they could have a whole bunch of money here to work with, and I don't know what that's for. Are they going out and trying to make some kind of a big acquisition with that? Are they trying to spend $5-6 million on somebody? And if that's a forward, then maybe all of a sudden, Robertson's going the other way, or there's not that spot for him that we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I just don't know who that forward would be. Like,
no, neither do I. But I mean, maybe Vancouver's got the sell-off, right? And you're looking there, or there's going to start to be movement here. There's been talk about the guys in Nashville. I don't know if O'Reilly would come here, but are you interested in a Stamkos or a Marchessault, or is there some kind of a piece you want to bring in from one of these struggling teams that's starting to sell?
Here's what I would suggest to the Toronto Maple Leafs is don't actively try to get older. You're just I don't think that that's the position that you should be in. Anyway, all right. So you wrote this great piece for The Athletic that I went over the other day, and I think it's super informative. You put up a board where you said where the Leafs are better, and it's great. This is just a nice, easy visual where you put the first 22 games and then the last 5 games. So we're now extending this, I think, to 6 because there's been another game that's been in there. So goals against has dropped off dramatically, 3.73 to 1.8, which is, again, lower now because they threw a shutout in there. But some of the other stats, like, shots against, are actually weirdly higher over this stretch.
It's because they've been leading in so many games, JD.
Yeah.
So then it's like a score effects thing that happens.
There's some score effects. So the big number is their save percentage has gone up from 0.88 to 0.95, which is insane. And again, higher because there's another game in there where their goaltender mixed in a shutout. So you're not allowed to pick goaltending because that's been the most obvious one, and anybody could tell you that. Like, what's changed for the Leafs? Well, they've had two goalies now go back-to-back in Hildeby and Woll, who have been spectacular. What is the improvement that you have seen numerically? And then I'll ask you just eye test-wise, that has most stood out to you when you put this together?
It's the high danger chances. And that goes for for and against too. They've really cut down the amount of high danger chances, especially at even strength that they've been allowing. And the penalty kill too. The penalty kill's been really good. And it's interesting when you look at on ice impacts for certain players. I mean, Scott Laughton jumps right off the page, and that fourth line jumps off the page. And you feel like, why you give up a first round pick to acquire this guy. He's a veteran. He's been around the league. He's been a guy that's been like a 17 goal, 35 point guy for years.
Mm-hmm.
You put him on the fourth line, you're only playing him 11, 12 minutes. But then you look at the defensive impacts that he's bringing, and they're huge. And I think that he's been a big driver, and Stetcher's obviously been a big driver too, getting him in and playing with McCabe and that pairing being so good and playing all the minutes they are. The high danger chances have dropped, 15, 16% from where they were earlier in the year. And that's huge, and it's part of the reason that save percentage number is coming up. It's not happening in a vacuum that the goalies have better numbers. They're facing an easier workload, so even though the shots on goal are similar, or like you said, slightly higher,
Yep.
they're all coming from the outside. And the numbers look a lot more like last year. The first 22 games of the season when they were struggling, when they were on pace for less than 80 points, they were giving up way too much. And they were giving up, it didn't fit their identity of what they were last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a big part of that is personnel. Carlo's struggling, Myers is struggling, Benoit's struggling. You don't have Tanev. A huge percentage of your D-core is not playing well defensively. They were just conceding way more than they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there were such huge negatives there down the lineup for them. And the forwards too. I mean, we can talk about Yarncroc in that position as well. There were these huge negatives, is that you just take those players out and you get even a replacement level player. And I think Stetcher's been better than a replacement level player, but even just getting in an average body to take those minutes and take you from a massive minus to break even, and you're in a much better position. And I think that's a big part of where they're at right now.
Well, I think that that's just a marriage between the two things, right? Like, you're seeing the numbers drastically shift on both sides of the ledger, but also eye test wise, they look like a team that is once again annoying to play against, which was always supposed to be the Berube blueprint. Like, that Tampa game, I looked at it, that second period, Tampa looked flustered. That's a veteran team full of a lot of very good players that was sitting there first in the Atlantic, the only team with an actual goal differential that looks decent compared to the rest of the Atlantic. And they just could not get to the middle of the ice, and they could not.
Do you see Berube's comment after the game? He said it's a low event game, but I've got no problem with that, basically. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, we know you don't.
Yeah.
Like, that was a Berube. He loved it.
Yeah.
He loved that game. And if they play like that, I mean, that's what he wants. That's what he wants to see. And I think the strange thing was, where was that the whole beginning of the year? And was it a personnel thing, or why couldn't they do that? And the newer players obviously felt lost. And I wonder if it's a case of, like I said, so many pieces on the blue line were struggling. They were spending so much time on their own end. And it's hard to have that identity of a lock it down, shut down team when you're just tired and you're beaten down and you can't get the puck out. Mm-hmm. And I think they just had too many guys that couldn't move the puck, and they couldn't keep other teams hemmed in the other end the way that they have been.
So for me, it's pretty clear that Roy now looks healthier and is way more impactful than he was earlier in the season. They've removed Michelli from the lineup, and frankly, he was a disaster. If you put Max Domi with Austin Matthews and Matthew Nyes, it's going to help shore up a lot of his inefficiencies as a player defensively. He's not going to stand out as much. Yeah, he's going to have the odd turnover. No, I don't think that he's the guy that you feel most confident when the puck's on his stick in the D zone. But he is sheltered now rather than playing a center role, which he had to with Scott Laughton. You've added another center who plays with that identity of hustle, but also responsible defensive player who can also win a draw for you and make sure that the puck gets out. Your goaltenders are making what I would say are the easy stops. They haven't had a bad leaky goal, which is, different than what they had through the first stretch when that save percentage was in the tank. And, when you say they're getting the puck out, I would point to the Troy Stecher edition and say, Okay, when you mentioned how he's not, he's better than a replacement level player. Absolutely, there's no doubt about that he has done that. But you just think about what they didn't have, which is a guy who can move the puck and who can get it out and who can slot McCabe properly. It's hard to overlook what he has meant to them. And they've done this before. We were texting a little bit about it, right? Like when Bobby McMahon came up and he gave them instant offense and provided for this team, they got a contract done quickly. Do you think that they are going to try to do the same thing with Troy Stecher, which is, hey, you're on your 7th stop. Things are working out here. Yeah, it's a tiny sample, but let's put some pen to paper and actually make this a longer-term thing.
I haven't heard anything like that, but I think they should.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the downside for the Leafs if they offer Troy Stecher a contract that's $1,800,000? You know, and for someone looking for some certainty and playing so well, maybe it makes sense. Because I think with a player like that, if you let it play out the whole year and he's playing big minutes like this in April, all of a sudden you're maybe going to get other teams sniffing around and the equation changes a little bit. And he thinks, and his camp thinks, oh, let's go to UFA and see what we can find. But if you're the Leafs, I think I would be talking to them right now. Because even if he ends up as your 6 or your 7 defenseman and you feel comfortable with him in that role, like I said, there's just very little downside there. You know, if he ends up on waivers at some point because his play dips off, which I don't think it will. I mean, I think what you're seeing with Troy Stecher is there's a bit of him playing for his life right now,
Yeah.
and playing out of his mind and leaving everything on the table, and maybe that's not sustainable. But everybody I've talked to about him around the league says he's good defensively. He's a smart player. He's just small.
Yeah.
If you can live with the small piece, he's not gonna generate a ton of offense. You know, I know there's been some talk about putting him on power play 1, and it shows how desperate the Leafs are right now. But
Yeah.
I don't think that that's realistic, and that's not really his game. But he's good defensively because he works. You know, he's like the Scott Laughton of on the blue line kind of thing, right? Where it's energy and it's being smart and it's being willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. So, you know, I reached out to his agent. I haven't heard back. You know, I don't know if there's been any conversations. I mean, it's only, what's he played, 8 games, 9 games here? You know, it's early days, but sometimes in the early days with a player like that that's looking for a home, you can get a bargain. And that's what I would be doing if I was the Leafs.
Yeah, I think they should absolutely be doing that. And by the way, over his last 5 games, he's averaging almost 24 minutes a night. The scoring chances are 55% for, which is the team best. Goals are 10 for the Leafs, 4 against, and the Leafs are 4-0-1. So, yeah, if you're Troy Stecher and you're trying to see what is working for you and looking at it and saying, hey, it's my 7th stop, but this might be something for me. This stretch is very small, but it's also very encouraging. And for me,
well, look how great
ahead.
McCabe looks too, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's exactly
you
right.
know, those guys know each other. They were training together in the off season. There's some sort of connection, I think, between their spouses or something like that.
didn't know
And
that.
they clearly really like playing with each other. So
Yeah.
there's a personal connection there. And this is the best McCabe has looked probably maybe as a Leaf. I mean, I know he's been here a while and he's had some good moments, but he just looks so confident. He's skating so well. He's playing mean and nasty. And he's been a huge part of cutting down those high danger chances that we're talking about. He looks like a different player than when they had him on his off side playing with Benoit. And, you know, I think they got to lock him in on the left side going forward, even though, you know, he's probably putting up his hand in the dressing room saying, I can play the right side. And it's
Sure.
like, no, you're so much better on the left. And if he likes playing with Stecher and it works, then why not? And then if you get Tanev back at some point, you know, it's kind of like found money that you can create another pair that you're going to feel good about.
So the Tanev thing is scary because Kipper on his show yesterday was mentioning that it's going to come down to a potential surgery that they would be looking at somewhere in, I don't know, back neck area and have to potentially open him up and try to get him right come playoff time. And what you do feel good about as the Leafs is you don't want to rush him back. Clearly, you want his long term. He's under contract now for what, 5 more years, including this one, because it was a 6-year deal. So 4 more seasons after this one.
I think he ended up signing for 5, right? Because there was all that
Okay, it
talk
was
about
5?
the league looking at the deal.
Okay, yeah.
What I heard, JD, is that surgery is not a guarantee yet. He's still meeting with doctors and consulting, and so it's
Right. But it's on the
they're
table.
doing more testing, and yeah, it is on the table. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you do lose him for a stretch, then you feel pretty confident about what Stecher can do with McCabe. I do think it's sustainable. And barring a massive drop-off in play between those two guys, which what's the indicator that that's going to happen outside of, like you said, Stecher is small? I think you now have the luxury of when Tanev returns that you look at him with Riley again. Like you try to get Morgan Riley going a little bit more. Like you can use him with Benoit and hope that Benoit finds his game playing with. Like it's such a luxury to have now that you could remove him and try to put Chris Tanev with somebody else who isn't as going as well and feel like
What
they
about
can eat
Ekman
more.
Larson? Like,
Yeah, maybe
look at
that.
the year that look at the year OEL's had. I mean, I could see that being a good pair. You know, the old guy, wily guy pairing. You
Yep.
know, I could see that working really well. I mean, you don't know when Tanev's going to be back. You don't know what version of Tanev you're going to get back.
Yeah.
It probably makes sense to pencil him in on a third pair to start.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe
Limiting
that
the
is with
minutes.
Benoit then. Yeah.
Listen, I'm never going to say you advocate for a surgery, but it's just the point I'm trying to make here is whatever they decide when they come to is it should be about this guy's long-term health, not him rushing back and trying to help the team this year, as desperate as he might be to play. Like, he's an older player. Those two injuries were both pretty spooky, and he's under contract for a few more seasons in Toronto. My real hope is that whatever decision they come to is not the one where they feel like it's rushed. But yeah, back to the Stetcher thing. What I really love is you mentioned that the knock on him is that he's small, but I like when you watch players and they play bigger than they are, or they play to their size. Like, this is the thing that I've been critical about with Dakota Joshua and that I've liked about him more recently is Joshua's huge. When he squared up the other day in Tampa Bay, you're like, oh my God, right? Like, this guy's massive. But through a lot of this season, I haven't really felt that. I don't feel like you've got a big, massive human being on the ice. He plays smaller than his size lately, much better that way. With Stetcher, when I'm watching him play, I never get the impression of like, oh, look at this little guy because of the way that he plays. He plays bigger than his size.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what to add to that, but yeah, 100%. You know, I don't think it's a mirage. I think frankly that size on the blue line kind of gets fetishized around the league, and then these smaller guys bounce around. And
Yeah.
but I was thinking about this last night. There are really good teams that have very small defensemen playing in their top four and have for a long time. Jared Spurgeon in Minnesota, Sam Girard in Colorado. You know, there are 5'10", 5'11" defensemen that are logging big minutes on teams. So, and I think that Stetcher can be on a good team. I think he can be an 18, 19 minute a night guy, especially if he's got the right partner, you know, and it really looks like McCabe's the right kind of partner for him. And it's the weird thing is that I'm not sure why Edmonton couldn't find a fit for him. It could just be like a systemic thing, maybe with what Berube is looking for, where he's not looking for anything flashy and he wants someone to close off the middle of the ice. Maybe that works for Stetcher. Whereas Edmonton's trying to do more of a puck moving, freewheeling kind of a, you know, counterattack with the players that they've got. I could certainly see that being the case.
The case that I've gotten from a couple of different people, including Versteeg, who watches a lot of the Oilers, is just that his role was being occupied by other guys. That they just didn't have the fit for what it was that he was doing. And, you know, I know that Tree Living had Stetcher in Calgary, so it wasn't like he was totally against the idea of ever having a smaller defenseman. But I do think it's funny, like thinking back to Dubas, right? There was I would say, when you use the word fetish, there was a bit of a fetishization there of smaller skill guys, right? It was taking the shots on the Malgins and what was the Winnipeg guy that came in here?
Patan.
Yes, Patan, right? That it was like, okay, go get soft skill players, go get skill, go get a certain kind of guy. And what was arguably his best draft pick? The guy that really floated things, like, because again, you pick in the top 4 or 5 players, who cares? It was Matthew Nyes who deviated from that. It was like, nope, you just went and got the traditional big lug who is 6'3" and has a football player's neck. And then for Tree Living, a guy who is priding himself on, I just want trees on the blue line. I just want massive human beings that can take away the middle of the ice and protect the net front and chip a puck out. That he ends up with the little guy who is just representing something different than what they have, and it might save the season.
It's kind of funny, isn't it? That I think they just went too far with the tree fence. Like, you know, I've said this on other shows, so forgive me if I've already said it to you, but like, you can't just have trees. You need branches too, right? Like, you need a decor that can do different things. And Stetcher is the different thing. So, you know, hopefully it continues to go this way because he's such a great story. He's got such a great backstory. And I think Leafs fans will fall in love with him just the way that Vancouver fans did, you know, 7-8 years ago. So, you know, it's such a good story for the team badly needed what he can do. and he's been able to step up and bring it. So it'll be interesting, when Carlo's healthy and if Tanev gets healthy, if he's an everyday lineup guy. I would think probably yes, but it's going to get more crowded, and that's a good problem for the Leafs to have, I think.
100% it is. I like to do approval ratings. And when it comes to, like, if you polled all of the city of Toronto and you got approval ratings on athletes, who would lead? And right now, I would guess that Troy Stetcher would have unanimous approval rating from everyone in Toronto. And if I'm him, I'm trying to ride the high of that. Like I said, I think the play is sustainable. It could dip off. People might end up getting frustrated at moments. But as of right now, when you're making the case for a contract extension, yeah, no one's saying you're giving him 5 years. No one's saying that you're giving him something massive, but a little bit of security and continuing the positive momentum that you have from this player, I'm certainly not against it. Okay, but the reason why I told you to leave goalies out of what is drastically improved is because, one, it's obvious, but two, is I think that there's a secondary conversation here. So Hildeby, it's a tiny sample, like the tiniest of samples. We don't know. Actually, we do know where Stolarz is. He was in the picture. Did you see that?
Yes, the four goalies, yeah.
Yeah, it got shared around like it was Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster. People were like, look at this. Is this real? Do you think this is AI? Do you think that he was actually there? So we don't have the timeline, but at this point, it feels like it's going to be 2026 when Stolarz is able to step back out on the ice and we get some clarity there. So you get a run of Hildeby. And if Wool does return on the timeline that he's expected to, which is sometime next week, then to me, it's kind of easy where you go 1A, 1B, and you give Wool more than that, but you're certainly not going to play him 8 of 9 games. The question becomes two things. One, do you think that what we're seeing from Hildeby is real? And two, if it is, what does that mean for this season?
I mean, I don't think he's going to be a .936 save percentage goalie because that doesn't exist. I don't think he's Igor Shesterkin.
Yeah, so you don't need to say that.
No. I do think it's real in that I think he's an NHL goalie. And it's instructive that the Leafs gave him a 3-year contract in September. That the extension wasn't, like a 1-year deal. We're not really sure about this guy. It was like, this is someone that's going to be in our organization. And, the 3-year deal, I believe, is a one-way contract. So he gets NHL money the next 2 years after this one. Mm-hmm. And he's going to require waivers next year as well. So they staked a claim and said, this guy, at minimum, we want him to be our number 3 goalie. So that says something. And I've been talking to people in Sweden and around the league about him and looking at his numbers. And last year he put up, I think he had a .913 save percentage in the AHL. He was something like 18th or 19th among regular starters, basically like an average AHL goaltender, which for a 23-year-old guy who's a late bloomer who was drafted, he was almost 21 years old. Yeah. Like he had been through the draft 2 or 3 years when the Leafs took him.
Yeah, I think 2 years.
4th round pick. Yeah. And he had been playing in the Swedish junior leagues in his, 19, 20-year-old season. He didn't get called up to the main pro league until, late the 1 year. And then he went on a playoff run. And that's when he caught the Leafs' eye. And it was John Elkin, who was one of the goalie coaches previously in the Leafs organization, that I think liked him. Mm-hmm. So he's a late bloomer. He's huge. And sometimes with the big guys, it takes time for their body. But putting up a league average save percentage in the AHL, playing about half the games on a Marley's team that was, mediocre last year, that's pretty good. Those type of players do turn into good NHL starters. So I do think it's real. It's just with goalies is like, how do you know? You kind of just need to see him play more to know for sure. But the package of how athletic he is at his size, how hard he works, that's the thing that the people in Sweden that I was talking to said, is he's just such a hard worker, and he's really pushed himself to go from, like I said, Swedish juniors being passed in the draft 2 years. It's not even that long ago. He was only drafted 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And to have the rise that he's had to where he's an average AHL starter for sure last year at 23, that's really impressive. So he could be one of those guys that's just on a trajectory like a Matthew Nyes, but for goaltending, where he continues to get better and better. And it's found money for the Leafs, because I didn't think he was going to be, after the way he played last year in the NHL, I didn't think he was going to be ready this year to do this.
Yeah, last year he only played in 6 games, but his save was .878.
Yeah, no, he looked like I know. That's when his stock dipped dramatically from. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that the organization saw enough that they gave him a 3-year deal based on that. Yeah. They saw enough in the AHL where they said, this is a guy, and this is someone we believe in.
Well, there was that preseason, right, last year, where that's when his stock started to rise from a buzz standpoint. People watched him in the preseason, they went, whoa, look at this guy. He's and granted, this also was a byproduct of the Leafs having a very thin farm system, And during preseason, you start to get a look at younger guys and get excited about pieces that could come up and help you in the future. So it was definitely that. Like, I'm not saying the preseason he was so spectacular that the whole league was, going crazy for Dennis Hildeby. But yeah, he came in, he didn't perform very well. In fact, I would say it was poor. And yeah, the save percentage wasn't even 913 in the Marlies last year. It was 908. Like,
He was the year before. The year before he was 930.
Yeah. So it's
he's had 2 years where I looked up last year though, and he was like league average or a little slightly above. Yeah, which is solid for his age.
No doubt about it. But if you look back, I guarantee you at fake trades that people created around the Maple Leafs a year ago, Hildeby's name was littered throughout them because everyone looked at them in net and said, well, they got Woll, who's their future, and they got Stolarz, who's the now, and probably ends up getting extended for a couple of years, which he did. So this kid ends up getting blocked. And I made the case yesterday that I would not basically entertain any scenario where you're trading one of those guys this year. The only way that would ever happen is if Stolarz came back, was healthy, was quality, but Hildeby also was just playing at such a level that you went, we don't even know how good this guy is in terms of like he's actually forcing you to steal spots and starts from Woll. I would be a believer in you keep all three guys and you let it play out because you've got two injury-prone dudes, and Hildeby's not proven enough that I would want to remove one of those guys from the equation. But if this is real with Hildeby, do you think it could get to a situation where they entertain something like that come deadline time, given, their lack of assets in other places?
I think the only way I would do it is if there was a team that's willing to give you something
significant,
substantial.
Yeah,
for one of the, and I don't see that. I mean, Woll, with how well he played, I mean, that's possible. But do you want to trade him?
Oh no, I'm not. The question only surrounds Stolarz for me.
Yeah, but I can't imagine anyone's going to give anything up for Stolarz with
that's what I mean.
How hurt he's been. Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, last year, yes. This year, and they just gave him a 4-year extension.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think you stick with the three guys. And if Hildeby's so good that you want to keep playing him, I mean, the Leafs are in a good position where he doesn't require waivers. You can send him back up and down. And if you want to spot start him in the NHL, or we all know there's going to be another injury at some point. Mm-hmm. And if he ends up being the guy you want to be your starter in the playoffs, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. In fact, it's beneficial to play a guy on a cheap contract in the playoffs with the way the new playoff salary cap works. That'll give you money that you can spend on other players. So
yeah. When people make fun of Toronto media market, this is why. Because we're having this conversation. It's fun and we should, and I don't care. But honestly, like Dennis Hildeby's had a couple of good games. And we're like, hey, come playoff time, if he's the starter and this is the way that it's going, this is peak Toronto radio right here.
You can't predict goalies. I mean, look what's happening around the league right now. Like Jesper Wallstedt for Minnesota is like the top ranked goalie, another young guy, and Askarov in San Jose is playing really well. And, and then there's all these established goalies that have like 880 save percentages, like Freddie Anderson and Linus Allmark and Jordan Binnington. And like, it's the most volatile position. So the only reason I say that is not trying to be overly optimistic or a Leafs fanboy or homer. It's just, I don't know what's going to happen. It could be that Hildeby has this massive season and he's a 920 goalie. The other two guys are at 900, and it's a no-brainer that he's a huge part of your future.
Yeah, and again, we're just talking. This is fun. We're just talking.
I'm having fun.
Just playing it out. But based on how he's looked, it seems pretty clear there's a guy there. Going to sneeze again. I can't get rid of this stupid sneeze.
I like the last time you were going to sneeze, you said something about clearing a blockage, which was on the roster, which was hilarious. They should clip that and put that out there.
Yeah, do not clip that. Do not clip that. In fact, take it off of YouTube or at least put some B-roll over me. Yeah, I think the only scenario in which Stolarz would get traded this season is what you outlined, where it's not only a team that would come to you and give you a lot, it's that he proves himself definitively better than I think both of the guys. Like that he would have to jump 2 in order to have it be an awkward situation where you're like, man, we don't have room for Stolarz. And then the rest of the league, like you mentioned, with all those older guys that are underperforming, that maybe there's a desperation come deadline time where a team goes, we have nothing. We got to make the call to Toronto. We got to try to pry this guy to here. But to your point, I don't really know what Stolarz nets you in a trade. And then it becomes something more likely that you do it in the offseason. You take back something but you're doing it more from a cap space standpoint where you're saying, like, look at what we could save in that.
Stolarz would have to come back and be absolutely amazing. He'd have to be as good as he was last year and play 15 games. And then
you're not trading.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I think it is an off-season thing, and the only question is, I guess, like, what are they chasing if we're talking about this trade? You know, like I said, you get off the Yarncroc money, and all of a sudden it gets interesting where you might have a lot of cap space, and they don't have a lot to trade. So I'm just like you said, it's hard to envision what they're going to be going after and what that other team is going to want, and if there's going to be value in one of their goalies.
That's it. That's
But
the only
but
reason
like
that
you
you're
said, you
entertaining.
don't want to trade Wall because
No,
of how good he's looked, and you don't want to trade Hildeby because you don't know what he is.
period.
You can't have a Tuukka Rask situation with Hildeby. Like, you just can't do that.
No. I would say that at this point, given realistic trades, like for what Hildeby is, he's actually untouchable just based on this stretch of play.
You have to wait out and see what I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he'd come back with all three guys next at the training camp next year. I mean, why not?
But that's what I mean, though. He's not untouchable in that I think that he is one of the best goaltenders of the future. I'm saying he's untouchable because there's enough of a flash there that you can't afford, like you put it, the Tuukka Rask 2.0. Like, you as an organization could not trade him for what he would actually return you, which is not very much, and then look at that trade a year from now and go, is that the worst trade that they've made in the last decade? That one cannot happen. So, yeah, I think they end up with their three guys. James Mirtle of The Athletic. Again, go read his work. It's great. Thanks for making time, buddy.
Thanks, JD.
Take care. All right, quick break. God, I'm going to go try to sneeze. We'll come back and we'll do what we missed. All right, Brandon, what did we miss?
I've been waiting to get your thoughts on this all week. So I was watching Sunday Night Football, and they on NBC they played an advertisement that kind of surprised me. It was John Hamm speaking to Team USA ahead of their Olympic attempt to win gold and take it from us here.
We'll see. We'll see if they deem the rink good enough for
Fair enough. That's very fair. But
now that the rink is what it is, I actually am now taking the position of, oh, you need the rink to be perfect because I need them to go. Like, I can't have them take Olympic hockey away from me. And then also, if we lose, I'll be like, yeah, you won on a joke. You won on joke ice. Congrats. That's fake. See you next Olympics when there's a real ice surface. Anyway.
Yeah. But so anyway, in this commercial, they had John Hamm pretending he was the coach of the team and kind of is trying to hype them up. And he asked them he says specifically that the U.S. is going to bring home the biggest prize of them all. And a lot of the players come to the same sentiment, which is that they want to see Canadians cry.
Yeah, I think is it Matthews that says it?
It was Jack Eichel specifically,
Okay.
and a few other of them had a few other lines and stuff. But that was the sentiment, was that they want to make us cry.
And they would.
Well, I thought it was interesting just based on the fact that they didn't lose they lost at Four Nations. Canada obviously took home that prize. But now they're kind of coming back looking to avenge the loss. I wanted to ask you basically if Canada needs a response to this advertisement.
No. This is the beauty of this rivalry, is that Canada is Big Brother.
Yeah.
And that everything they do, this is very Vancouver has a rivalry with Toronto of them. Like, Vancouver is obsessed with hating on Toronto, and Toronto doesn't care about Vancouver at all. So when they pipe up, this city's like, cool. They're like, why are they putting the games at 4 o'clock our time? It's because there's more of us, and we call the shots. So sit down and get ready for 4 o'clock. You can have your supper after the game. It's the same thing with USA Hockey. You are little bro. Canada is big bro. Canada's not in the business of saying we want American tears. That's a bonus. We just want to win. That being said, I don't think it's embarrassing for USA Hockey to do that, because that's the bar for them now. Is if you win and you beat Canada, then you become the standard. So them saying Canadian tears is, one, a compliment to Canada, because they're not doing Swedish tears, because Sweden is not the standard for hockey.
Yep.
I don't care how many World Juniors that these countries pass off without Canada ever winning them again, and we just stink at the World Juniors, and I'm not used to this. Canada is the standard of hockey. USA is nipping at their heels. They are desperate to catch them. This is as talented as they've ever been, and they are trying to unseat the natural order of things. So, to me, I don't take any issue with this. Like, I know you and McKee were doing the whole rent-free thing, and I go, I don't, like, this is just, it is what it is. Like, you go at the champion. So this is the weird thing about being I would say, a Bills fan for you this year. Like, if you guys win a Super Bowl, everyone will be ecstatic. There's no question. There's nothing that will take away from it. But if it happens the year that Patrick Mahomes is in the playoffs, when he's been papa to Josh Allen, and that's been the real resume knock, people are going to say that to you. And it's the same thing with USA Hockey. If they win a Olympic gold, but they didn't have to beat Canada to get there, who cares? Like, yes, again, you're going to celebrate it just like a Bills fan. You can only play who's in front of you, and the natural response is, well, you weren't there. It's not our fault you weren't there. But deep down, that's the truth. The truth of the matter is the Bills win a Super Bowl and there's no Chiefs, and people will say that forever. And if USA Hockey won Olympic gold and they do it without Canada, we will say it to them forever. And as much as you can celebrate it, as much as you will deny it, and as much as you will buy all the Buffalo Bills, USA Hockey, whatever merchandise you can, whenever people say it to you, well, you didn't beat Canada. Well, you didn't beat the Chiefs. For the Raptors, that version is, well, there was no KD. You know, like, those things linger, and it is a reality. So I don't mind USA Hockey saying that we're the standard. I don't think it's rent-free. I think it's reality, and it doesn't make me feel any way like Canada responding would shake me.
Right.
If we made that commercial, 5-alarm fire. Immediately, like, panic alarm city. Oh, my God, we're not confident in who we are. Our thing is we just go out and do the thing. Their thing is the talk about Canada. Try to get in Canada's head. Like, have all the podcasts you want, Matthew and Brady. Like, go get more. Have Jack Eichel on and have Austin. Like, do your thing. Do your thing. You know who's never going to have a podcast? Nathan McKinnon and Connor McDavid together.
Yeah.
Like, do your thing. Win the media battle. I don't care. We're going to win at the Olympics. I believe it.
I could see Brad Marchand doing a podcast. He'd probably be great at
During the Olympic cycle?
Maybe not. But I think him specifically, you might see a little tear or something from him when they get on the ice and he's trying to, get at some of these Team USA guys. I think he would use that to their advantage if he can to kind of rile them
Dude,
up.
listen, yeah, like that commercial comes back to haunt big time if they lose.
100%.
Yeah, like, that's a tough one.
Quickly, just want to get your thoughts on the big news around Phillip Rivers and the obsession, it seems, with older quarterbacks coming back to play.
What do you mean the obsession? I don't get this. I saw this in your email. It was like, what do you mean the obsession? Who's obsessed?
Well, it just feels like teams like, the Steelers come to mind just because of how they brought in Rodgers.
Well, he's a Hall of Famer. He was still playing.
100%. And maybe there was something there. So I just wondered.
No, this is desperation.
Yeah.
This is pure desperation.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you that, like, I am all for old guys playing professional sports because it makes me feel younger. So credit to him. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow. We got Ben Ennis. It's a good hour. It'll be my last show this week, but tune in.